This is an excerpt from my free office hours that I do on Zoom once a month. In this video, I'm going to share 3 essays where I gave feedback and coaching to the students. The first essay is a student applying for a Master's of Science in Electrical and Computer Engineering. The person does a good job explaining some of their technical experiences. However, in the essay, it's unclear what they want to do in grad school, and it makes a lot of the essay come off as vague. In a back and forth conversation, we're able to tease out what is the field that this person wants to go in, what is the technology that they want to work on creating, and what is the context in which that work needs to exist in the world. This is an example of something I see a lot. People are generally interested in a topic or a field, but it's not clear what specifically they want to do with that skill set. As I coach them through getting more specific, think for yourself, what is the context of the field you want to go into? What's happening? What are the challenges? Where do you see this technology being applied? Why should this technology exist? What solutions is it going to create to what problems in the world? Think about those questions to help you get more specific about what you want to do in grad school and in your career. As I review these essays, there will be music playing as we read silently the essay, and then I will pause after each paragraph and explain what is working well in the essay or what can be improved. As you follow along, think about how some of my questions might apply to your own essay. Okay, so something I noticed from these first 2 paragraphs is I know I talk about starting with storytelling. That's less important in technical fields than non-technical fields, but there's something here where it's not really clear to me. It's very vague, and it's not clear how this is related to embedded systems. So because you're kind of talking about how you felt in this moment, it would be more powerful if you were giving us an example from talking more technically about what you were experiencing in this moment. Does that make sense?
I kind of assume that the person who would be reading would have a technical background and would understand why it's connected to embedded systems. I don't know. And also I try to connect it in a paragraph. So basically in this one, I talk about how I didn't know how to map the ground movements and stuff. And so I didn't know how to create models. And I try to tie it together in the bottom where I say that these are the particular courses that I want to take and learn on these topics, because this is a challenge that I faced, and I want to overcome it through these particular courses, is what I was trying to do, but I do understand that it's not that clear.
Okay, we could keep reading and see if something below pops up as something that can come up to the top. And this is something, I read lots of essays, and it's generally the second page, first paragraph. People say something brilliant that's demonstrates how smart and cool they are and how awesome what they want to do is. And I always take that paragraph and I just make it the first paragraph because you want the first paragraph to really be super crystal clear with what it is you care about. The other thing I want to ask you before we move on is what were you, and I don't know anything about embedded systems, but what was the context of this project? What were you trying to solve for? What was the issue area you were addressing?
Okay, so basically, I talk about geophones. So basically, it's a sensor and it detects ground movements. We were making this device which could be embedded into the ground to detect trespassing and intrusion. So my job was to detect these vibrations, and then after that, we use machine learning algorithms to like classify whether the movements were caused by some animal passing by, was it some trespasser, or was it just some car at a far distance.
Awesome. So I think that's all really great context. If you're going to go into talking more about that, then, there might be stuff we can copy and paste and move it up here. Or like what you just said when you watch the recording, I think summarizing that into this paragraph that's what I mean by it would make it more powerful. If you say like, we were charged with detecting vibrations and then using machine learning to actually classify, are these this or are they that? So when you put in the context of like what you're trying to solve for, it then makes this go from being vague to seeing like, oh, this is why using embedded systems for this kind of problem solving is a really great solution that you want to explore more for your career, not just as like a project. We'll start. Oh, and then the other thing I was going to say about this paragraph is just a little generic. There's nothing in it that's really telling me much about you. And this is something, the way I like to think about this, if say someone else is applying to the same program, if they could copy and paste this sentence in their essay, like someone else could say this about themselves, and it's not like representative enough of you. Because even saying, your personality to be creative and competitive, those are just kind of generic. And so I actually think it's better to have to either go into more nuance about those experiences of the ways you learn to think in both systems in a way that's more nuanced, or you can just delete this and just jump straight into like your skills that you have.
I have a degree, like my bachelor's degree is from India, but I'm applying in the domestic applicants category. I'm a U.S. citizen, so I felt like there was a lot of confusion there, and I felt like I had to clear that somehow, and CMU didn't have a personal history statement.
Okay, let's think about this transition a little bit. So we can say something like, maybe just delete that. What do you think was the benefit of having both education from India and the US? What do you think you got in India that was missing in the US and vice versa?
In India, it was more about the rough competition. Yeah, and then in the US, it was, I really explored my creative side in many ways. So that's why I put those two words together.
Got it. Okay. I think a little bit more nuance on that would actually be really helpful. And I'm curious, in India, were there a lot of women in your technical program?
No. So we had a class of 100 students and we were like 18 girls.
Wow. Okay. So it's similar to the US. I was just curious to see like, oh, maybe there's actually more balance with women who are on the technical side of things. Maybe I just talked to a lot of women in tech from India in these office hours. Okay. Well, so I think maybe you can talk a little bit about that. Like in India, technical courses are very competitive, while in the US, something like this, I was encouraged to explore my my creative side, like, and then give an example of something creative you did. So just something like this that's a little bit more nuanced, because this is a little bit like generic. Okay, and then we can jump into the next paragraph. I don't think you need this sentence. You just want to keep the focus on you and what you are doing. I also think somewhere maybe in this paragraph or here, you should also mention being one of the only women. where you can say something like, where I was one of 18 women in my 100-person program. And you don't have to put in that much detail. You can just say where I was one of the only women, or here too at this hackathon, like where I was one of the only women. And something for like, you know, when we talk about diversity in these essays, you don't necessarily need to go into diversity of like, here's the challenges I've overcome, but just mentioning that you are a woman in STEM, like, so they know. And especially those of you who are applying from outside of the US, where your first names might not be common to people in the United States. They may not know if you are your gender just by your name. And like, you know, programs do want to support women going into technical programs. So somewhere just mention that you're a woman in your essay if you're applying to a STEM program is what I recommend. But I think this is a great paragraph kind of showing your leadership and that you did well here. This, if you're tight on a word count, you don't need something like this here. It doesn't take anything away to remove it. For those of you following along, this is a good example too of talking about like kind of what you did versus what your team did. And this is in this paragraph, what I see is like you took initiative. Like when you say, I knew we needed a better approach, like you took initiative and then you did something specific that was like your contribution. And this is something I see in a lot of essays when people talk about a team project and they don't mention their unique contribution. They talk more generally about the team. You want to bring it down to the level of like what you did, what you brought to the table. Oh, here you say first female chairperson. So that's great. So you don't need to have what I mentioned up here because I was like just somewhere mention that that you're a woman. I'm curious with your GPA, did it bounce back or you just had lower grades was this your last year?
It was okay, then it fell exactly when I was the chairperson, and actually before that, and then it came back up.
Okay, then I would mention that. You can say like, you know, that my GPA increased like once I put more emphasis on my studies the next year or whatever, just so they see like they didn't just go down and stay down. If they went back up, you want to mention that. I would just like add another sentence here that okay, so I think these two paragraphs are great, like kind of getting specific about what you want to do there. I think this is like the heart and it needs more detail. And especially because you're moving into embedded systems, I want you to get into what about this is really like important to you, why you want to focus your career on it, what's like the latest and greatest happening in the field that you want to explore. Like I want you to actually go deeper on why embedded systems and why embedded systems is a good fit for you. So right now you're kind of high level about it, and I want you to take it a layer deeper where you're demonstrating that you're someone who has a good handle on this. And I wish I knew more about computer science to give you some better examples. But I do this a lot when I read public health essays. It's like people are talking about public health generally, like, we want to improve disease management. And I'm like, no, talk about like which disease, who is it impacting? What are the approaches happening? What are the gaps in the approaches? What is not working? What do you want to bring to the domain? I can say that with public health because I understand those things. With this, I don't know what the layer deeper is, but I would ask you some of those same questions. Like, what are the advancements happening in the field? What's the potential of embedded systems to solve problems you care about? Like, where do you think the future of this field is going, and what role do you want to play in that field? So I hope those questions could help you just like go a little bit deeper into why embedded systems and what you want to do with embedded systems and why you are a good candidate to study embedded systems. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I just had one question. So, when you start talking about where the field is headed and how much potential it has and stuff, isn't it kind of like you're telling the professors who are extraordinarily like capable in their fields about their field, and that's we don't like I feel like I'm not the right person to tell them that. And how do I separate like have a boundary between telling the professor about the field and like my passion for the field? I don't want to preach basically, and that's when I did try to write stuff like that, but it sounded like I'm just telling them about the field that they already know.
Yeah, that's a really great point. And think about it this way. You're not telling them what they already know. You are showing them that you get this field, that you actually understand it. So this is something like when I was on a public health admissions committee, I would read applications from people who it was very obvious they wanted to go to med school, and they thought getting an MPH was going to help them get into med school. And they didn't actually get what public health was. They're saying some jargon, but they didn't understand public health. And then, the people who get admitted to school, they're talking on a deep level about what public health is and the issues. And it's clear to me they actually understand what public health is, and they're people who are going to be really thoughtful in the field. And so that's kind of the balance we're looking for, is you demonstrating that you understand what's happening in the field, right? And then the way you can do that with more of a perspective on I versus you is like, what's your role in that? Like, I believe the future of this field is X, Y, and Z, and I am excited about diving deeper into X, Y, and Z and using X, Y, and Z to solve X, Y, and Z problems that I care about. So like in like defining the terms and showing that you know what's happening in the field, apply it to what you want to do within that field.
I get it.
Okay, great. And this is for everybody. Like in your essays, you want to demonstrate that you're someone who actually understands like what's happening in the field. But I think these paragraphs are really detail oriented about the professors, what they do, what you want to learn in those. And this is the other thing too, is like these courses, speech recognition, smart fabrics, water heater, what do these things have to do with what you are interested in embedded systems? So it's kind of like the deeper you go here, it will be easier to see the connection with why this matters for what you want to do.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then let me read this. Okay, and then I think this is something you can maybe think, and this isn't due for a while, right? Like the fall.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So you have plenty of time to work on this. I actually think you can go deeper here with, you haven't mentioned this previously, But what is it that you want to use embedded systems to do? And you say cost-effective, scalable embedded solutions. What does that mean to you? What would be an example of a product or something you would develop that you think would be really beneficial if it existed?
I personally want to work in the field of medical devices that are basically wearable devices that have sensors and I mentioned scalable because these are very, very expensive, and through the right amount of research, and if I know what sort of like the right sensors to choose, the right microcontroller to choose, basically energy efficient systems, you can bring down the cost, but that's a big challenge in the field of embedded systems right now.
Okay, that's all phenomenal, and I think that's how you go deeper here. You can start out talking about like medical embedded systems have a huge potential to improve medical devices using sensors to blah, 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 but there's still a limitation of making these cost effective. I want to dedicate my career to working on technology that's going to improve access to healthcare and health outcomes using this technology and working on figuring out those solutions. Like that can be the focus of your career that you start out with, and then the essay then kind of sits under that of like, here's my experience, here's what I what I really want to see happen with embedded systems. I think like expanding on that, like exactly what you just said, could be really powerful, because right now you're just talking about embedded systems generically, but getting specific about the application of embedded systems that you want to see used in the world, that's where these kinds of essays get really powerful. Brainstorm, play with it, like, see what some of the coolest technologies are happening in the field. The second essay I review is someone applying for a Master's of Science in Environmental Engineering. However, because of their personal experience being undocumented in the United States over the last 5 years, they haven't been able to work in the field. We talk about how to address that in their statement of purpose and show that they are prepared and ready to go into the field of environmental engineering. So this is a Master's of Science in Environmental Engineering. Any questions or anything you want to mention before we dive in?
Yes, well, I'm not done yet with my essay. I'm still working on it. But since not many people are sharing things here, so I just wanted to see, to give me feedback for what I have so far, because it's been very difficult for me. English is not my first language.
Got it. Okay, cool. Well, I always highly recommend sharing early and often, because a lot of times you can spend time perfecting something and realize it's totally off track. So I'm glad you're sharing now. Okay, I'm curious, when you say in my community, where is your community? I would have you define that, like in my community. It sounds like it might be in New York, but like get specific. Like in my community in the Bronx in New York, where I grew up, thousands of people are exposed to blah, blah, blah. So that helps make it more real when you can like name it specifically. There's some, I still can't edit this, but there's some English things here that can be improved. Not too many like big grammar issues. It's just kind of making the language kind of read a little bit more smoothly. But I like your emphasis on like the kind of big picture. Here are the things you care about. And then I think it's also great because I don't think all environmental engineers necessarily personally are impacted by, a situation like this because of where they like, and because of where you come from, that you've experienced this in your own community. I think that's actually a powerful point that you're making, that you've experienced this personally, and you can even talk about, you said English is not your first language, like if you yourself are an immigrant, are a person of color, you can mention that, that this has impacted you and your family and your community. And now you want to use your skills to actually make your community and others like it better. I'm not sure what the CEC is, so I would spell this out. Great. This is a great example of kind of showing some of your technical skills, what you've done, overcoming a challenge, and then showing a win with this article being published. I would have you name the article or name either the name of the publication or the name of the article in here as well. And then something too, just kind of word count wise for everyone to look out for. I see this a lot. Like, I had the opportunity to be a part of a project. Like, you having an opportunity is not important. What you did is important. So you can just say like, while I was working at Petro Process, I did a project to study the feasibility. So you can just like cut all of these words out. Okay, I think this is a really great start. You are doing an excellent job articulating your skills and what you care about. Engineers tend to have a harder time writing, but your writing's actually, there's English stuff that can be improved and tightened up, but you're actually doing a really great job explaining, here's what I did, here's how I did it, here's the problems I solved. So like the content is phenomenal. So you're getting there, and it's easy to have someone help you improve the English part. But overall, this is a really great start. What I would have you focus on in the next page, if you see like this other example we looked at here, we see that there's a couple paragraphs about this person's experience, and then they switch into talking about why the university, so you just need these paragraphs now, right? Like, what do you want to do in the master's program? Why is that university a good fit for you? And then, environmental engineering is also very broad. So what specifically within environmental engineering do you want to explore further in grad school? It seems like you've had an emphasis on fossil fuels. So what about fossil fuels and the processes related to that? Do you want to focus on, or in grad school, do you want to switch and focus, I don't know, on earthquakes or whatever it is? It could be something different. And so that's what you need for the next part is, what in grad school do you want to do, accomplish? Why is the grad school a good fit for you and the next step in your career? And then I'd have you in the conclusion probably come back to that idea of being able to improve the conditions in your community and being able to have that as your career. But overall, I think this is a good first start.
Yes. So here's the thing. I have a big gap in my career because I came to the US like 5 years ago. And since I came, I haven't been able to work on engineering here. So I don't know how to approach that, or if that is going to affect me some way through this process of the application. I don't know if I have to write about it in this statement of purpose. So yes, I'm having questions about that. And what could you suggest me?
Okay, and does this university have a personal statement or just a statement of purpose?
Just a statement of purpose, and it has to be one page. And having traveled as well, I mean, my story is very long, so I don't know if I have to compact everything because it's telling so much, and that's good, but I'm not gonna have space to tell the whole thing.
Okay, do you want to briefly tell me kind of what the past 5 years has been like for you?
Sure. Well, I came here. I've been undocumented. I came without papers, and during all those years, I've been working on them. I learned English. I took the TOEFL recently. I got like 100 points out of 120. I already fixed my situation. Now I can go to school. I can have financial aid. Uh, that's what I've been doing during all those years. And now I feel ready to pursue a master's degree, which was my dream ever since I got here.
So what you just said, you can watch back this recording. That's like 4 sentences. You can put that into towards the end, in the intro, where you talk about the community you come from. Like, I came to this country as an undocumented immigrant, and I've had to put my dreams on hold while I've had to work really hard to blah, 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 blah. And now I have my papers, and I'm ready to go back into the field and keep pursuing my dreams. So you can give us that very short snippet. I have an example essay. I haven't put it on YouTube yet, but it's a student who got into MIT and a bunch of other PhD programs for, I think, electrical engineering. And they had a similar situation. They didn't know English when they came to the country at 19 and were washing dishes for $3 an hour. And that's obviously like super, super hard. But what is great in their essay is it was like 2 sentences in the intro where they were like, I came to this country, I was washing dishes for $3 an hour while I learned English. And then I was able to go to community college, and now they've done all this like really hardcore science lab stuff and have published papers and all that stuff. And now they're pursuing their PhD. So they didn't go into this long story, but that was still really important to demonstrate, this person had to work really hard to have this career, where other people who didn't have that experience, they just get to focus on developing themselves in their career without these burdens. And what I would have you hone in even more on in the intro and or conclusion is why understanding your community and being where you're from and being able to provide solutions to environmental engineering is really important. Because I come from a similar community. If you've read my essays, I was born where the Port of Los Angeles is, and I had terrible asthma. So does everyone in the community. The air quality there is horrible. And I cared about environmental issues there, but I didn't have any technical skills to address it. I was just kind of like, okay, this sucks. What do we do? And that's why I went to grad school, so I could understand policy and understand like, how do we actually use like public health and city planning to change these conditions. And let me tell you, working in the fields that I work, I don't know if I've ever met anyone who's from where I'm from. Like in all the projects I work on, I am like the only person from one of the communities we're trying to serve. And I tend to be working, there often are, some people of color, and they all are people who really care about improving the conditions for communities of color, but they don't know what it's like to be from there. And there was a time when I was managing a project that it was a $20 million project, and our executives would kind of get on their high horse and be like, we need to do X, Y, and Z. And I would be like, oh my God, that is going to be so terrible for all these reasons. And I would have to be the person to raise my hand and say like, being someone who comes from one of these communities, I feel that decision would actually negatively impact people because of X, Y, and Z. And as soon as I brought my real world experience to it, people would be like, wow, oh my God, we never thought about that. And it was like so sad, because anyone from my community who did not have a master's degree could have told them the same exact thing. But I got to be the person sitting at the table because I went and got these degrees. And so you coming from one of those communities, knowing what it's like to breathe that air and deal with those problems, and then being one of the people who develop solutions is really, really, really important for the field. And so I think that's something you should actually emphasize in your essay. The third essay I review is a student applying for a travel fellowship internally in their university. This is a 300-word statement of interest where they talk about why they are interested in doing this fellowship. One thing we talk about is how the person doesn't put enough emphasis on themselves and what they bring to the table in this opportunity. Would you like to share a little bit about where your essay's at and what you'd like us to focus on?
Hi, Lauren. So I am actually applying for a fellowship, and it's the personal statement has to be 300 words, and I think my essay is at exactly 300 words. And so it's called the International Fellows Program, and it's a program for graduate students at my university, and it's focused on international affairs, policy, development work, global health, and I'm currently a master's in public health student. And so this program selects grad students from all the different schools in the university. So I want to bring my public health perspective to this program, and hopefully learning more about international affairs will better inform my work as a public health practitioner in global health. I wanted to share, I went to your office hours 3 years ago, and you helped me with my personal statement to grad school. So I just wanted to say thank you so much. And it's really nice to see you again.
Awesome. Great. Well, welcome back. And this is a little sneak preview for some of y'all. This summer, I'm actually going to be launching a online community, and it's going to be something you can join, and it will be this space to kind of keep having interactions, even while you go to grad school, when you have scholarships, fellowships, things like that. And in this community, there'll be a Q&A form, and then there will be weekly office hours that don't get posted to YouTube. So it'll just be a very open space where you can pop in and talk about anything related to something you're dealing with in grad school, like study tips, applying for more fellowships, getting money for a conference, whatever it is. So I hope to see people back more, because I actually really like when I get to follow up with people and hear where they're at in the future.
Yeah, I'd love to join.
Awesome. All right, so let's dive in. Those of you who are not in this stage yet, I want to give you some just advice is that your university is going to be the best place to find funding. It's going to be a lot easier to get money from pots of money through your university than external funders, because external funders are going to be far more competitive. In this program, there's probably, not more than 100 people applying for this amount of money. It's probably, each program generally has 30 or 40 people. There's maybe 5 people across these programs who are interested in something like this. So it's going to be not that competitive compared to when you're applying for external things. So you always want to be on the lookout for your university's options for funding as well. So this will be a good way for folks to just kind of start getting familiar with fellowship types of applications. So this is for everyone, especially when you have a tight word count, never use in order to. It's so common. We all use it in order to. It's just extra words that don't need to be there. Well, you can have the to here. And then the other thing too is when you're using to be verbs a lot, to something, to something. We tend to do that in academic vernacular a lot, and you don't need multiple verbs. And so you can just cut out words by eliminating those kinds of things. Academics say things a lot like the ways in which blah, blah, blah. And it's you don't need to say that, just say blah, blah. And you just always want to look for those little things to cut out. Okay, great. I think this is very concise and it's very dense. Like you get a lot communicated in these 300 words. Like it's clear you have experience, that that you've worked in these international settings before, that you're thinking about a multi-sector of issues. One thing I might have you expand on, and I know it's a statement of interest, is I might have you eliminate this paragraph. Like it's a nice little anecdote, but I think I would have you expand on why this program is going to be good for you and why you are going to be good for this program. Maybe you could talk more broadly about like the need for public health folks to understand what's happening at the policy level, and what are some of the limitations and challenges when you only have a public health lens, and why understanding like these multi-sector approaches are really important, and vice versa, like what happens when our leaders are making decisions about policy that don't actually incorporate understanding of public health. Like if we've seen all the issues of COVID and how most of the decision making is happening by like people with no health experience, or B, with medical experience, which is not public health experience. And so, maybe talking a little bit about why combining those perspectives together is really important for global health in general. Like you need all of these different perspectives. So you're getting into it a little bit here. It's kind of like one, 2 sentences, but I'd actually have you expand on the why this multi-sector approach and bringing in public health is like really important, and why you're the best person to do that. Like say, I'm sure there's lots of people who are in your global health program. What do you bring that's unique, that's different than some of your peers?
Yeah, I that's really good information. I think I do need to maybe delete this paragraph, this middle paragraph, and then expand on why I'm a good candidate for this program. And I think it might be important to mention, I was thinking like how government programs need to be tailored to communities, and how public health is not like a one size fits all approach. So maybe I can weave that in along with what you said about policy.
Yeah, there's so many things around like, policy doesn't often have buy-in of people, which is what's happened with COVID, right? And people not wanting to wear masks and things like that, versus like public health has so many creative solutions to how to do things. Like some of my favorite public health examples are like when the government paid like telenovela producers in Latin America to insert public health themes in their telenovelas. And like public health does lots of creative things that are really about behavior change and getting into the psychology of people. I'll just open it up now for any questions people have.
I'm applying for an engineering computer science program, but I am specifically interested in embedded systems. The thing is that my current job profile is not on that topic, but to keep myself associated with that topic, I do have a part-time internship in a startup, but my full-time job isn't in that specific domain, although it is, of course, related to computer science. Should I like not emphasize it much in my SOPs, or would that look skeptical if I just like circumvent the whole skip this experience?
That's an excellent question. And this is something I think applies to many people. When you are either changing fields entirely or doing something tangential or something you've never done before, this is a common thing in applying to grad school, and that it's totally okay, because most people, like, that's why they're going to grad school. It's because they want to dive deeper into something that they don't know enough about. They want to make a transition, they want to make a change. That's all fine. Like, you can and it's great that you already have some experience with that part-time work you're doing. And so you can talk about your transition of, like, you know, here's what you're doing now for your day job, here's what you're doing in your startup, and here's how you've realized you want to explore embedded systems more deeply in grad school and make that your focus rather than what you're currently doing. The thing is, when you're talking about your current job, you want to emphasize what about that job is relatable skills that are going to help you be successful in a grad program. So even though you may not be working on embedded systems in your job, there's other skill sets in computer science that I'm sure you've developed there that you can speak to, like being able to problem solve, being able to work with the team, being able to improve systems in some way. Like, I'm sure there's something you can talk about in that job that's going to demonstrate, yes, you can handle the caliber of a grad program and you're someone who will do great in grad school. So it's less about speaking exactly to what you want to do and more connecting the dots between where you've come from and where you want to go. And that's true for everybody. If you are moving into something that is a little bit more different, or if you don't have that much experience, or your experience is very different, like, it's you just kind of talk about the relevant parts of your experience that are going to show you're going to be a strong candidate for grad school. If you want to get feedback on your essays, you can sign up for my email list and you'll get updated when dates become available for new office hours.